Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast. This is a space where we talk about the real, unfiltered experience of caregiving and the parts that don't always get said out loud. Because caregiving is not just about what you do for someone else, it's about what it does to you in the process. And today I wanted to talk about something that is a little bit complicated that I think can cause a lot of stress or a lot of joy in your life, and that would be spouses. And I kind of wanted to talk about this a little bit more sentimental to me because I just got married this past week. So I will be the first person to say that I do not know everything about marriage and relationships, but I do know that, again, it can be one of the things that brings the most joy into your life. But I know that for a lot of people, whether you are caring for your spouse or maybe you're caring for someone else and you felt it impact your relationship with your spouse, that is a real part of relationship strain, either direction, because this is supposed to be the person that is your partner in all of this. And sometimes it can end up feeling like your biggest support or your biggest source of pain throughout all of this as well, if you're, grieving your relationship and whatever way that has changed. So first I want to talk about, why is this so hard? And I think there's this assumption that if you have a spouse while caregiving, that you are not alone. But a lot of caregivers will tell you that's not always true, because you can be in the same house, sleep in the same bed, share the same life, and still feel completely alone in what you're carrying. Because research actually shows that caregiving puts immense strain on relationships, with the majority of caregivers reporting tension in their marriage. And to me, it makes perfect sense, because caregiving changes everything: your roles, your energy, your priorities, your emotional capacity. And so instead of you two being partners and you always putting that person first, there may be times where you have to put the person you're caring for first, and that's not going to be the same. You're suddenly a caregiver, a decision maker, a crisis manager, someone holding a lot of that invisible weight, and your relationship has to adjust to all of that and figure out what the dynamics of your relationship are going to be. I mean, even just the fact that you're probably going to have less time together. Maybe it's more difficult to go on a date night like you usually used to, right? All of that can just put a lot of strain on a relationship. And so the next thing I want to talk about is kind of the negative side of this, of when your spouse doesn't show up how you need. And I have learned so much in my other work. I do work with some therapists, I do some couples counseling, and it's been so interesting to kind of hear from them what the basis of couples counseling are. And I will say, if that's something you think you need, absolutely go and do that. Or if your spouse is not willing to go to therapy, maybe try seeing somebody who does see couples and could still talk you through things that you guys could work on together, right? Because sometimes your spouse can be physically there, but emotionally not meeting you where you are. And again, I think in these kind of situations, to work on a healthy relationship, you got to remove the blame. You can't focus on that. That is not what I'm trying to say in these conversations either. But what I do want to do is validate how you are feeling and say that you're not crazy for thinking that your spouse is suddenly like dropping the ball or anything, that is what that can feel like. And so that can look like things, maybe they are minimizing what you're going through, or not stepping in unless you ask, and you just want somebody to take something off your plate and not have to tell them what to do, right? It could mean getting overwhelmed and pulling away, or trying to fix things instead of just listening, or acting like life is still normal. And here's the thing, it's not that they don't care, it's often that they just don't see and understand everything that you are going through. And understanding that doesn't make it hurt any less, because you want somebody that sees every part of your life and understands what you're going through, right? You want somebody who understands you on an emotional level, and maybe they did that in the past, and so now you're like, okay, but why aren't they understanding what's going on now, right? Because what you need in caregiving, it's not, we've talked about this so many times in so many other episodes, you don't want somebody to just do things for you. Half the time you just want somebody to be there emotionally, and you want someone that understands what you're carrying. And I think that could be one of the biggest things to help your relationship with your spouse, is being able to communicate your feelings and knowing that they can see you, right? Because when that's missing, it can feel like, I shouldn't have to explain this, I shouldn't have to ask for this, why don't you just get it, right? And that's the point, that it's not healthy for a relationship if you feel like you have no voice, if you feel like you can't be who you are, right? So now I want to talk about what actually matters in relationships and go into a little bit of research here as well. If you have listened to any of our episodes, you know that I love my research. One of the most important things it shows is that it's not just the caregiving itself that leads to burnout, it's feeling unsupported while doing it. So caregivers who feel understood and appreciated by their spouse experience less depression, they have less stress, and better overall well-being. But on the flip side, when there's disconnect in the relationship, caregivers experience more emotional strain, more resentment, and even worse physical health over time. So this isn't about the feelings, it's about your mental and physical health. So now I want to talk about, what does support actually look like? And I hesitate to put that qualifier on, like, what does support actually look like? Because again, this is going to be such an individual thing, and only you will know what will feel supportive to you and what you need from your spouse. Only you know your spouse and what they can offer as well. Because again, I think something to acknowledge in this is like you have no idea what your spouse is going through and the pressure that they have. Maybe your husband is stressed out at work and feeling extra pressure because you took a break from your job to be a caregiver, which is great, and he loves that you're doing that. But now that maybe feels like he's created more stress on himself to be the sole breadwinner, right? Or maybe like there's just other emotional things going on. There's a lot of different things that can go on in somebody's life, right? And so I think it takes a lot of compassion and understanding to kind of meet in the middle. So support, like we've said many, many times, it's not let me know if you need anything or stepping in once in a while. It can look like emotional presence. So not trying to fix things, not rushing through it, just being there with you in it. I think that is one of the things I can appreciate about my husband and the way that he sat with me at times, and just half the time I think it's because he doesn't know how to fix these problems, which is perfectly fine. But being able to just sit there with somebody, I think is a great quality, and something that sometimes you have to explain to people, like, hey, please don't offer solutions. That was one thing my therapist told me, is just be straight up and work on communicating with each other about what do you need. What is it that you need from the relationship right now? Do you need a solution? Do you just want to talk? Do you need me to go beat someone up? You've all got those friends that joke about that. Apply that to your relationship too, and be very clear and vocal about what you need or don't need. Because I think over time, the ability to understand that can get better. Number 2 is taking initiative. So maybe explaining to your spouse, like, hey, I want you to just notice and step in. The dishes are dirty, go ahead and clean them, right? It may seem intuitive to you, but again, people do not notice the same things, and sometimes you do have to point them out. Number 3 is learning your world. So understanding the condition, the routines, the emotional toll, just so you're not carrying that mental load alone, right? Maybe this could look like saying, hey, I'm really stressed about the medical decision we have to make coming up. Would you mind also doing some research? Or maybe you're actively researching nursing homes for your mom to go in, and you ask him to find 3 and you're going to find 3, and then you're going to talk and compare notes on what you noticed and what you found, right? I think there's a lot of ways to involve your partner, especially if they are not going to be one doing the bathing or physical parts of care. There are so many other ways that you can still bring them into this world and try to keep them involved in a certain way. Number 4 is protecting your capacity. So I think you still need to figure out how you're going to find rest, how you're going to create space to breathe, and reminding yourself that you're more than just a caregiver. And I think if you're struggling with that identity, that is a great thing to bring to your spouse or to your support person, because they are supposed to be the person that reminds you who you are when things get really difficult and tough, right? So maybe, I love the example from one of our past episodes where she discussed how she would be super stressed out, would never take time for herself. So finally, she worked with her husband. She was taking care of her mother at the time, who lived with them as well. So now a weekly part of their routine, or maybe it was even daily, I don't remember. I think it was weekly. Every morning, on Friday mornings, her husband would watch The Price is Right or Wheel of Fortune or something with her mother every morning, so that she had time to leave and go do yoga or to go do a nail appointment, whatever it was that she wanted to do. And I love that, because I think that is a very simple way, give them a specific task they can do together, something that will take up enough time that you're allowed to still have space and go do your own thing, right? Because I think, I've heard from people, especially that are able to keep their jobs through the caregiving process, that becomes a lifeline to remind them that they are a person outside of this. So if you do not have anything to take you outside of caregiving, that is absolutely something you need to work on, and working to prioritize some things. And, it's going to take time. It's going to be a sacrifice on both parts. But I think being able to express that to your spouse or to some other kind of support partner would be a huge help to help you recenter everything and ultimately be a better caregiver, because you're able to show up more fully for your person, right? And the 5th thing that I think can make the biggest difference for if you're, you need support, if you're looking how to support somebody, is saying the right things. So, although again, I hesitate to say saying the right things, because there is truly no saying. It depends on the person, right? And only you're going to know what they need to hear. So this can come from saying things like, I see how much you're doing, and this is a lot, and you're handling it with so much strength. Or you're not alone in this, I am here. I think just that last one could mean the world to somebody that is a caregiver. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is when resentment starts to build, because I think I need to go and find this, but I saw a speaker one time that does research in human relationships and different things. He said something along the lines that one of the best predictors for whether or not somebody was going to get a divorce was when they started to actually resent each other, I believe was the word that he used, or maybe it was contempt. In my brain, those are very similar words. I'm sure that somebody else would tell me how they're very different. But the main idea was that if you kind of start to see this person from a lens of hatred and are not able to connect with them emotionally anymore, that's just not very good for your relationship. And so I think that resentment can be really common, and a lot of people may not want to admit that. And when you're in your relationship, and especially when one of you is a caretaker, because you can love your spouse so much and then still feel frustrated, hurt, or even angry with them because they're not having to do what you're having to do, right? Maybe one of you had to make a decision to be a caregiver, or I've even seen that, because it's more common for women to be a caregiver, sometimes it's even more common for a daughter-in-law to take care of her father or mother-in-law rather than the sons of that person, right? So I think there's just a lot of complicated dynamics that can come into play here. And resentment usually builds when your needs are not being met, you feel unseen, or you are carrying more than it feels fair. And so ignoring that's just going to continue to grow and build. I've literally got a splinter in my finger right now that if you ignore it, it's going to remind you that it's there, right? It's not going anywhere. So rather than just ignoring it, I think it's really important that we're honest and that we discuss these feelings, and also on the flip side that your partner is creating a safe space to talk about these feelings and not, feel attacked by how you are feeling, right? I think that's a really important skill to have as well too. That will take time, it's a whole thing. Again, not trying to say that I am an expert in relationships or in any of these topics whatsoever, but I wanted to talk through some practical ways to kind of navigate these feelings. And here's a few things that can actually help. So one that we've kind of talked about is saying what you need clearly and specifically. So not, I need more help around the house, you never help. Focus on, can you handle dinner 3 nights this week? I need 30 minutes tonight to decompress. Can you take over? Very specific, tangible things that they can do, because I think sometimes people get worried about doing something wrong, or they know that you can do it much faster than they can, and so they wonder if it feels like a waste to do it, right? But I think if you can focus on giving them something specific, that will help a lot. Number 2 is to share your inner world, not just the tasks that you have to do. So let them into showing you how this is affecting you emotionally. I really am dreading this doctor's appointment on Friday because we might be getting the diagnosis that could change everything, right? Show them why it's hard and what's going on, because again, that emotional connection is what builds a stronger relationship. Number 3 is give them a way to succeed, because sometimes, like I said, people don't show up because they don't know how to. And giving them that understanding can really help. Maybe you sit down one night, even though I know it might feel like, do I really have to do this? Maybe you sit down and you spell out exactly how you meal prep. I go check the cookbook on the counter, find 2 recipes, then I make the shopping list, then I go place the order. You'd be surprised how many things that we overcomplicate it and get stressed out about, that I think if you can kind of make a task book, or this is how I do this, then that might actually simplify things. And I'm not trying to say that anybody's stupid. That's not what I'm trying to say either. But, just our brains can get so busy and so emotional that sometimes, I remember even when my mom goes away on a trip and I'm responsible for watching my siblings, she will literally write out for me, get in the car line at 2:30, go to this school, then go to this school, then you're going to park in the parking lot and stand outside the car and wait for your sister to walk over from the other school or whatever. I appreciate those directions so much because I could not do it without it. And I'm sure to my mom, it could come across okay, I could literally just tell you to go to the school and it wouldn't matter. But I need that level of detail to make sure that I do not end up having a school call me because I left a child behind, or up late or something. So I think, that level of detail can be really appreciated sometimes. Number 4 is to recognize effort when it's there. And so I think, again, rather than focusing on the frustration, if you can constantly say hey, I really appreciated what you did when you did this. That was helpful. Or hey, that made me feel great when you did this for me. That alleviated a lot of stress. That kind of positive reinforcement is going to mean that will happen again. and that they want to keep helping you and they want to see you be happy, right? And then number 5 is to consider outside support. So whether that's therapy, community, or caregiver groups, because your spouse cannot be your only source of support. And I think that's sometimes where a lot of strain in relationships come from as well. And now the only caveat I'll put here is that I do think it's very important to not talk bad about your spouse to another person, because that can just create a lot of stress and tension. I would say maybe the only exception to that is if you're going to openly talk to a therapist about some of the things that you're feeling, but probably not a good idea if you're going to call up your mom and just complain about your spouse. But I do think that there's a lot to be said about caregiver support groups, about finding a church community, or whatever it is that you can have other people in your corner, because you need more than one person in your corner to make it through something like this. So at the end of the day, I want you to really focus on the fact that you are not meant to carry this perfectly. You're not meant to be a perfect caregiver, and your spouse is also not meant to be a perfect spouse either, because caregiving is going to stretch both of you. It's going to show your gaps, it's going to create tension, it's going to ask more of your relationship than most seasons of life are ever going to ask of you. But it can also create deeper communication, stronger communication at that, and really strengthen your partnership in ways that you would have never seen that kind of growth before. So I think if you can focus on that aspect and how you can improve your relationship, I think you'd be surprised by ways that you can grow through caregiving with your relationships, rather than seeing all of the strain and the tension that happens from it. And so if this episode resonated with you, I just want you to know that you are not wrong for wanting support, you're not too much for wanting to feel seen, and you're not alone if this has been hard on your relationship. Caregiving doesn't just change your life, it changes your relationships too, and learning how to navigate that together or on your own is all a part of the journey. If you want more support like this, make sure you're following the podcast, and if you know someone who's caregiving with a partner, send this to them, because I think this is something more people need to hear. But I am so glad that you are here taking care of yourself today, and I can't wait to see you next episode.